On today's show, it might only be a preseason victory, but I like it.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about your victorious Capitals as they pick up a big win in New Jersey. There's a lot to feel good about. It was good to see Carlson out there. It was good to see Chychrun, Ovechkin, Dylan Strome. The band is back together again for the most part. There is a lot to be excited about. And I understand that it was only a preseason victory, and you can only read into that so much, but a big win for the Capitals, who had struggled in the preseason thus far. But you see how much better this team plays with the big guns in the game. Logan Thompson, there's a lot to love. We'll talk about that in the show a little bit later. We will talk about Logan Thompson and how his play out on the ice was nothing short of stellar. He is definitely going to make it an interesting battle between himself and Charlie Lindgren, who will reign victorious. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll talk about Jakub Vrana, and he might have just played good enough to get a stay of execution. And another look for the Capitals, we'll talk about that. And then in the final segment, we'll talk about positive line combinations and deep pairings, what worked, and a lot to love in this game. So there's a lot to break down, and a lot of enthusiasm follows this victory, as it's really starting to feel like hockey is in the air when you start to see a lot of the familiar faces. And don't get me wrong, it's nice to see a lot of the young talent, but to see the names and to see the faces that have been huge for the Capitals for so many years, it was a great victory. In a preseason victory, New Jersey, the Capitals saw strong performances from Strome and Duhaime, who each scored 2 goals. Can you believe it? John Carlson found the back of the net as well. Thompson made 25 saves, while Dowd contributed with 2 assists. Ovechkin led the team with 5 hits, and TVR had a primary assist and 4 blocked shots. Chychrun and Carlson were both +3, with Chychrun also leading the team with 4 shots on goal. Vrana had a secondary assist in the game. Later in the second period, the Capitals scored 3 goals in just 4 minutes and 32 seconds, leading them to a 3-1 advantage after 40 minutes. Ovechkin continued to do what he does well, and that's throw around the body. Would have been nice if he found the back of the net, but Ovechkin continued to lead with 5 hits. TVR had 3 blocked shots and also made the stretch pass that led to Strome's breakaway goal. Vrana also, like I say, earning a stay of execution, contributed with a secondary assist. A lot to unpack here, quite a game, and it looks like the boys showed up to play. And, you know, the Devils made it really close towards the end, but they also pulled their netminder. But all things considered, I'm not too worried about that. What I'm more concentrating on is how well this team played together as a team. There's a whole lot to like. I like Chychrun. I like Carlson. That was a good dynamic there to get a good look at Duhaime out on the ice. This team, I think, is going to be really good. And some people are like, well, I thought you said they were not doing that good yesterday. These are the big players. And still, I stand by it. It's an assessment time of the season. We're getting a look at these players, but there was more veterans and more familiar faces in this game, big name players, I think, that really showed up to play, and that is what made it exciting. But if I am going to name my first star of the game, I would say it was Logan Thompson. And the anticipation, the excitement that surrounds him joining this team is palpable. There was some questions on my part, thinking that maybe Hunter Shepard would be that good number 2. But I think that Logan Thompson, I think Charlie Lindgren is an excellent tandem and will rival most any tandem in the NHL. That is how high I am on it, and I think the Capitals made an excellent decision. A lot is at stake as both Logan Thompson and Charlie Lindgren are entering into contract years. So is Hunter Shepard. There's a lot of lines to follow in the netminding department alone. In his first game with the Capitals, Logan Thompson displayed exceptional talent, hinting at a possible return to his all-star form from 2023. The Capitals had high hopes for Thompson when they acquired him this offseason, and he did not disappoint in his debut. He exhibited remarkable agility, impressive reflexes, and quick lateral movement, making 25 saves on 28 shots, and some of them were most stunning. Saves that I think a lot of other netminders in the league would not have made, he made quite flawlessly. He moves very well in the crease. There's a lot to love about his game. His performance in the crease, combined with his quick glove hand, showcased his potential to form a formidable goaltending tandem with Charlie Lindgren. So we can kind of put in the rearview mirror the season that the Capitals had with Darcy Kemper. And I think that if you are an everydayer of the show, you know my thoughts on Darcy Kemper is I think to a certain extent he got a bad shake. In any event, that's in the rearview. The Capitals right now are in a much better position with Logan Thompson and Charlie Lindgren. If you watched the game, you saw his stellar play out on the ice. And I think the Capitals are in a unique position. And when I say unique position, I think that, you know, historically, the Capitals have had great netminders for, well, a really long time. Let's just say that. And a lot of other teams struggled to find one solid netminder. Take a look at the New Jersey Devils, for example. Last season, it was a turnstile in net, and they struggled all season. So the Capitals are in that unique and great position that they have a glut of talent. So you take a look at it, we know the number 1 and number 2, or 1A and B, however you want to look at it, the Capitals are in a really good position. Mitchell Gibson backed him up tonight. That would have been interesting to see him to a certain extent. But what we've seen thus far is good. Hunter Shepard has struggled to an extent, but the netminding department as a whole looked really good. I think in order for us to make an accurate assessment, talking about the netminding here in general, Hunter Shepard is to see how he's going to play with the big name defenders in front of him. We saw some of them, so it's good to see how this team is forming and gelling together. The netminding department is huge. As you know, if you don't have stout netminding, your team's not going to do that well. You can have the greatest goal scorers on the ice, but if you don't have a backstop in net, your team is going to struggle. The Capitals have that, and and I know that this is a sample size, and I know I say it's important not to judge things in a vacuum, but Logan Thompson looked very, very good. Capitals fans, there's a lot to be excited about. This team is trending in a great direction, and they're going to be leading from the netminding out. I'm loving it. So a lot to be excited about. Hopefully we can get another chance to see him again here real soon. I would imagine Chucky Sideburns will get the next start in net, but a lot of excitement that follows, and see what kind of play Charlie Lindgren has. Make it a competitive battle. But the good thing about the Capitals now is they can definitely split that workload. It's not like how it was years ago where you got to ride the hot hand and the other guy just sits in the back seat. Hey, I have zero problems with Logan Thompson starting or Charlie Lindgren starting. It really doesn't matter from what I've seen thus far. Granted, I haven't seen Charlie Lindgren. I think that it is, or this season, I think the Capitals are going to hit the ground running, and it is going to be a fun Capitals team to watch. All right, so coming up here after the break, the big news this afternoon was that Spencer Carberry said there was a lot at stake for Jakub Vrana. If he didn't play well, that could spell the end of his time with the Capitals. I think he redeemed himself. Let's break it all down straight ahead. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And it's one of the things that's frustrating for me. My favorite band comes to town, my favorite comedian, whatever the case, and you're sorting through trying to find tickets. It can be frustrating. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. The Capitals season is going to be starting real soon. Why not take advantage of this great offer from Game Time and save a little bit of money? Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And listen, on any given Sunday, there is a lot of football. And sometimes you're really into a game and sometimes you're really not. But if you want to pique your interest, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game, all of a sudden those games are that much more exciting. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure and join the Locked On Capitals Insiders. There's more information in the show description. I will give you exclusive videos and insider information. Check it out, Locked On Capitals Insiders. There's the link in the show description. All right, in this next segment here, we're going to talk about Jakub Vrana, Jakub Vrana, Jake the Snake, however you want to refer to him. And he is the player that he's a fan favorite. Let's just start there. There's a lot of warm fuzzies that go all the way back to the 2018 season. He's the guy that always has a smile plastered on his face. He is the player that teammates love, the fans love. So that is, I think, why it was very special and kind of a cool moment when Jakub Vrana was able to find his way back to this team, albeit on a PTO, a professional tryout, that he was able to try to come back to the city where it all started and redeem himself. And did he do that? Well, in the first game, it wasn't looking so good. And that's where you're at on a PTO. You cannot rest on your laurels. You need to kill it, or they could be kicking you down the road. And you take a look at Jakub Vrana, and there was the press conference this afternoon with head coach Spencer Carberry, and they asked him about Jakub Vrana and how important this game was this evening. And Spencer Carberry, in a very serious, his jaw clenched, and you can tell when he's very intense and serious. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, a very serious game. There's a lot at stake. And you can read into that what you will, but when you're on a professional tryout, things can go one of two ways. Either you make the team or you don't. And I think that Jakub Vrana may have just redeemed himself tonight. So if you are in Camp Jakub Vrana, there's a lot to be excited about. Jakub Vrana shines in his quote-unquote last chance game. Jakub Vrana's performance in the preseason game was nothing short of impressive. With all eyes on him, he demonstrated exceptional speed, skating, and playmaking abilities. So the thing that we know about Jakub Vrana is he has wheels. He's got the need for speed, but can he deliver on a night in, night out basis? And the bigger question, however, is who gets knocked out of the lineup to put him in. That's a tougher question in certain regards. You can vote for Jakub Vrana because that's something that makes me feel really good. But who is going to get knocked out of the lineup to accommodate Vrana being in the lineup? Vrana's efforts were rewarded with an assist and a positive plus-minus rating, showcasing his determination to secure a spot on the roster. His standout performance was significant turnaround from a previous preseason game, positioning him favorably in competition for an extra forward role. That's my assessment. What's his role going to be? An extra forward. I don't see him slotting in. So we don't need to think about it. We don't need to question it. I think that's what he's going to be. Is he going to be content taking on a role like that? Well, I think that once you get to the PTO part of your career, then you're going to be okay with it, unless you have a more viable option out there. We know that he's played on various other teams in the NHL and also spent some time in the AHL, that he's kind of running out of options. He redeemed himself. Is he okay with being a depth player on this team? That is the question. I think that, you're still getting paid handsomely to play hockey, a game that you love. And what is some of the things that we know for sure is that injuries are an inherent part of professional hockey, professional sports in general, but we know that the unfortunate is going to happen. And how great is it to have a guy like Jakub Vrana in your back pocket to say, hey, we're down a guy, but guess what? We got a secret weapon in the form of Jakub Vrana. Now, I don't think that he has fully redeemed himself. I still think that he has much to prove, but there are other players on the bubble. And, I'm going to go ahead and say who those other players are. Andrew Crystal. That was an interesting thing, too, is that Spencer Carberry said that he thought he took a step back. I'm not really sure where that step back was. I don't, think that he played his best hockey. I don't think he played horrible hockey. And then you take a look at even Miroshnichenko, for example, as well. So there's going to be a lot of pieces in flux. That's just with the forwards. Also, take a look at the blue line. Is Alex Alexiev going to be able to earn a spot on this team? That there are players that might not have a spot on this team that maybe in your mind you had circled for being in the opening night roster. So Jakub Vrana, I think that if he is fine, and I think he will be accepting a role of more of a backup player, then I think he will be fine. But he still has been not given that yet. I think that he saved himself by playing well tonight, but with the Capitals and Spencer Carberry and Chris Patrick, they need to see more from him before he's given some sort of deal. I'm pulling for him. And I know that that's something that I always say I'm not supposed to do, and we're not supposed to do, because you're not supposed to have favorites. I think that, I got to stick to my own word. We want the most qualified guys out on the ice any given night. And I think that if he does, get that contract with the team, then he is the most qualified guy, maybe in a reduced role, maybe not what he had expected, but, this isn't 2018 anymore. And I think to a certain extent, he's going to have to accept the roles that he's been given. But as of right now, as I record this, at 11:25 p.m. Eastern, I think there's a bit of a stay of execution for Jakub Vrana, and for that, he must be feeling pretty good. All right, so coming up here after the breaks, we'll talk about what worked tonight. There was some really great chemistry out there with the forward lines and deep pairings. What popped off the page for me, I'll discuss straight ahead. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So if you are involved in the hiring, if you are involved in the firing and the HR process in general, you need Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on the Locked On Capitals podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So there was some great chemistry that was already brewing out on the ice. And it's reassuring, as you know, that was one of the things I talked about in the last podcast, is to get some of these veterans out there and see what works. So Ovechkin, Strome, Mangiapane, Duhaime, Dowd, Radish trios stand out. The line combinations put forth by Coach Carberry yielded impressive results during the preseason game. The Ovechkin, Strome, Mangiapane trio and the Duhaime, Dowd, Radish trio lived up to expectations and played a pivotal role in the team's success. Strome's 2 goals, Ovechkin's assist, and Mangiapane's gritty performance highlighted the effectiveness of the first trio. Additionally, the fourth line of Duhaime, Dowd, and Radish excelled, demonstrating their potential to contribute significantly to the team's success in the upcoming season. And, you know, the more and more I look at it, that is going to be, they're kind of tipping their hand already right here. I do believe that the first line is going to be Ovechkin, Strome, and Mangiapane. And not to etch that in concrete or in stone or whatever, that is subject to change if there's a dip in production. But I think that there was some good production out there. And at the end of the day, they could tinker with it a little bit. You could see Strome and you could see Pierre-Luc Dubois flip-flop. You could see Mangiapane and you could see Wilson flip-flop. So that is exciting. And also the fourth line. That is a line that has been held down by Nick Dowd for quite some time, and he is kind of the leader on that fourth line. That he kind of has his expectations and is kind of, I'm going to go ahead and say, kind of like the captain of the fourth line, if there was such a thing. But he is a vocal leader, and we've seen a lot of players mixed and matched over time. I quite fondly think back to Hathaway and Dowd playing together on the fourth line. We've seen Protas down there, different players that have been plugged and played. But, you know, you take a look at it this year, I think that is what it's going to be. Duhaime, Dowd, and Radish. And, in a small sample size, I think it looked pretty good. It's important, of course, and I like to get ahead of myself, just like I think a lot of you do as well. Like, hey, that worked. That's going to work all season. I'm not saying that, but tonight it looked good. And that is reassuring as, you take a look at the pieces that were subtracted in Malenstein and Nicholas Ave-Kubel, that was quite a vacancy. The fourth line has been quite stellar for the Capitals for quite some time, and Spencer Carberry mentioned that as much as well, talking about that don't look at it as like a reduced role or, hey, I'm a fourth liner, that it plays a huge role on this Capitals team. So I don't feel anything less about it. And as far as Ovechkin, Strome, and Mangiapane, well, the proof is in the pudding, as they say, as Strome was magic out on the ice tonight. Of course, we would have liked to seen Ovechkin find the back of the net, but he was contributing in his own way. And sometimes it's not always getting on the score sheet with a goal. I know that is what we love about his game, but he did get production out there, throwing around the body, getting an assist. That is what it's all about. But of course, at the end of the day, we want to see more. But it wasn't just the forward line combinations. Also, the deep pairings showed some chemistry as well. Jakob Chychrun's strong debut, TVR's standout performance, those were the things to notice. Chychrun, John Carlson were huge for the Capitals, and there, of course, was no question for me with John Carlson, as he is that steady Eddie, that guy that is always stellar out on the blue line. It's great if he has a great pairing, and I think that Jakob Chychrun will be just that. The acquisition of Jakob Chychrun proved to be a significant step in strengthening the team's defense. Chychrun's impressive performance, leading all skaters with 23-11, 4 shots, and a plus 3 plus-minus rating, showcased his ability to generate offense and play a key role in his own end. And that is what we want. We want players that are going to alleviate some of the players that were getting overtaxed out on the ice. That is the same reason that they brought in Roy. John Carlson was kind of the de facto guy, like, hey, you guys aren't living up to expectation, or this guy over here isn't playing that well, that he would just bear the brunt of all of it. The Capitals have a lot more options now, just in Chychrun and Roy alone. Furthermore, John Carlson's goal and assist, along with TVR's confident performance, added depth and strength to the team's defensive lineup. So to put a bow on this, Capitals fans, there is a lot to feel excited about, that the Capitals picked up a nice win. The team looked good out there. Was it a perfect game? No. I was kind of hoping that it would have been the first game of the regular season, but in any event, the Capitals looked really good, and we're hoping that they can build on that. And of course, we're still in the assessment point, as it's going to be a different batch of players in the next game, of course. But to a certain extent, it seems like this preseason kind of drags on as I anxiously await the start of the regular season here. But taking a look at it, the next game on the docket is the Capitals versus the Blue Jackets Friday evening. And then the Capitals Blue Jackets again on Monday. The Bruins on Saturday, October 5th. And then it all kicks off as the Capitals take on the Devils on October 12th. So a lot to be excited about. I cannot wait for the regular start of the season. A lot of these players that are skating out there, they're not destined for this team, but we know what we have. If we need a call up, we know what we have. And there's still players out there that I think, I don't know how they're going to get shoehorned in there, but Dylan McElrath's game I like as well. He has that physicality, and I think that is part of the identity of the Capitals, that he could be a call-up if he doesn't break the opening night roster, which seems like kind of an out there thing. But all things considered, the offense played well with Strome out there. I like seeing him out there in particular, and to get a good look at Carlson and Ovechkin, the nucleus of this current batch of players was a really fun evening and an enjoyable night of hockey for me to watch, albeit a preseason game. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that watch this on YouTube and listen on the audio side. You are what makes this show successful. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.